Brought to you by Basecamp Ed. I'm Morgan, your host of the Homeschool Curious podcast. Whether you're deep in the homeschooling world or just starting to get curious, I'm here to bring you inspiring conversations with parents, educators, and business owners navigating the wild, wonderful world of parenting. Let's get curious together. This Christmas, give the gift that keeps on giving. A full year of faith-filled homeschooling. With schoolhouseteachers.com, one membership covers your entire family with hundreds of pre-K through 12 courses, 25,000 streaming videos for families, biblical lessons woven throughout, parent resources, and of course, special member perks. You can even bless another family with a membership this season. Use code FRESHSTART2026 to get your annual membership for just $199. Plus, receive a Mama Owl tote with your purchase. Offer ends January 8th. Join now at schoolhouseteachers.com, and I'll link it in my show notes for you too. Welcome back to the Homeschool Curious. This is Morgan, your host, and as you can see, it's another solo episode. New background, new lighting. I'm in San Diego, and I'm so happy to be in the United States. So if you listened to last week's episode, I came clean about living in India for the past 2 years, which I had never talked about on the podcast before. If you did listen to it, I ended it with, I'm not going to turn this into a travel podcast, but I feel like I have a lot of expertise and advice on traveling with little ones. So I feel like this podcast, especially with the holidays coming up, might be really good timing for me to give you a sense of what kind of goes on in my mind. There's different steps in the process of traveling, so I'm going to organize the podcast that way. But I've traveled alone since my firstborn son, who is now 5.5, was 3 months old. See, when I had all of my babies, we lived in Washington, D.C., and our whole family lives on the West Coast. All I've known is getting in an airplane to go see family. And so a lot of the advice that I give about preparing could also be really good for traveling in a car. But honestly, I say as a mom, I'd rather do a flight than a long road trip, because at least the kids can get up and move around and do that once they're on the airplane, whereas a long road trip kind of freaks me out. My first time ever traveling with a baby was by myself. My first son was 3 months old. It was my dad's birthday, and my husband could come for the actual weekend of the party, which was Friday through Sunday. But I was on maternity leave, and traveling 5 hours across the United States just for 2 days didn't seem worth it for me. So I was like, you know what? I'm on maternity leave. The baby only needs me anyway. Let's be real. I'm just going to go out a few weeks early and spend it with my parents before the party. And then I think I flew home with him after it or whatever. That's what we do a lot. And so I gained a lot of confidence from doing that, to the point that when we lived in India, I also traveled by myself from India back to the United States for both summers. That's what a lot of spouses would do, would be to come back for 2 months while their spouse was still working. And I felt bad leaving my husband, but also in India over the summer, it's called monsoon season, and it just torrential downpour rain. You can't even leave the house. A lot of the streets flood. The roads aren't really prepared for that much rain. And with 3 little boys, they need to get outside. They still need to be running around. And it was really hard. So I sucked it up. I traveled 30 hours by myself, because why don't you want to be in sunny San Diego with your parents? So I've done a lot of domestic and international travel. So why not put all of the things that I've experienced the past 5.5 years into one episode? And I hope this helps you too. So before I start, this might sound cheesy, but if I had to give one piece of advice for a traveling mom/parent, it would be stay calm. I know that sounds obvious and really hard in the moment, but your child, you already know this, your baby or your toddler can sense when you're stressed. So staying flexible and staying positive. If you had only to take away one thing from this episode, it would be to stay calm. Another caveat before I begin is that all of my experience is traveling economy. So I promise that I'm not like cheating, going first class, flying home by myself. No. The only time that my husband and I have traveled with the kids first class was a trip to Dubai. So from Mumbai, which is where we live, to Dubai, you kind of cross like this little gulf. So it's like a 2.5 hour flight. And we were flying Emirates, and a lot had happened with my mom. My husband and I hadn't taken a little family vacation with our own boys. I was in a little bit of a depression. And so that whole trip to Dubai was a splurge. Everything that we did was probably out of reach when it comes to our budget, but it was just needed. And so that 2.5 hour flight, flying first class with the kids, was amazing. So service is better. The flight attendants are so nice to you. Snacks are amazing. The space in the room. So every other trip I have ever done has been in economy, like usually the last row. So all of the advice I give, you can take it knowing that I was not flying first class with my kids by myself. So I feel like the best way to organize this podcast is to categorize how I travel. So first, by booking your tickets online. Second, what to bring, how to pack. Third is at the airport. And then the final category is actually on the plane. Once you get through steps 1 through 3, you've done pretty much the hardest part. I feel like once I finally get onto the airplane, I can take a sigh of relief. Like, oh, okay, you're here. You did it. Now all you have to do is get through the flight. All of the stuff leading up to it and what goes through a mom's mind, your mind is going in 5 million directions while you're preparing to travel and while you're at the airport. But once you're finally on that airplane, you're on your way. So starting with booking your trip online. And I'm sorry if any of these come across as obvious, but number one is paying extra to pick your seat. Where you sit is so important. Even just coming back like 2 weeks ago from India, my husband and I paid extra to sit. We were actually the last row. So depending on the size of your family and what the airplane looks like, most international flights, it goes 333, like in terms of the seats. At least that's what that plane was. But the last few rows of the airplane, I think to give extra room for the flight attendants, they take away a seat. So instead of it going 333, it went 232, and we're a family of 5. So we're like, perfect. We're going to pay extra to go the 3 seats and then the 2. And no one has to sit next to us. Also, another thing to consider, especially if you have a baby, is either calling the airline before you book or booking the ticket and then calling them to ask. Usually the first row of every section of the plane will offer a little baby bassinet once you get up into the air, which is game changer if that's an option and available. So definitely ask if you have a baby like 12 months or younger. I used a bassinet a few different times traveling, and even like most of the time my babies wanted me to hold them to be able to like put the baby down into the bassinet while I was doing something for a different kid. It was really helpful. Like I said earlier, I traveled by myself for the first time with my 3-month-old son, and I always loved window seats before I had kids, so I figured it gives me something to lean up against. And I learned my lesson day one. Do not pick a window seat with a baby. You need the aisle. He was having a hard time on that flight. And so I think I made the guy in the middle row and the aisle get up probably 5 times, which I was feeling really bad about. Every time he started to get fussy, I needed to be standing up rocking. So pick an aisle seat. It's easy access to get in and out. Once the boys got older, like them to be towards the window so they can't escape and get out of the aisle. So obviously it depends on like what phase you are with your child, but making sure that you picked the right seat for the flight. Another thing to consider when you are booking online is if you are doing a flight that is offering meal service, to reserve or book the kids meal for your child. And usually that's done online or by calling them after you book your ticket. Their food always comes out first. It's usually a little more kid friendly than what they're serving the adults. And it usually comes out fun, themed, like Spider-Man with a little toy or piece of candy with it. So that's just a few little minor things to consider while you're booking your flight. And then the next category is packing. and kind of preparing for the flight. So in your diaper bag, probably goes without saying, have enough diapers and have enough wipes for things to go south, right? Like your flight's been canceled or delayed. You need to consider having enough diapers, not just for the 5-hour flight, but this has happened to me from DC to San Diego. Everything that could go wrong did. And it ended up taking me nearly 24 hours to get home. So always be prepared for the worst case scenario of that happening. And you'll always read, oh, pack a change of clothes for the baby, but also consider for yourself too. Like food or spit up will get all over you. A poopy diaper will explode and you're left with nothing. So even if it's just very light yoga pants and a long sleeve t-shirt, just to have in your diaper bag as well for you. And then kind of depending on age. So for a baby, like 6 months or below, if they like to be swaddled, which all of my babies did, I pack a swaddle because that makes them feel safe and secure when they're on the airplane. And as a mom of 3 boys, I live by carriers. So have a carrier handy, always packing one in your diaper bag for the going through the airport and as well as being on the plane to have your hands free. Okay, so packing for toddlers, like 1 to 2-ish up. I always do a variety of snacks. For some reason, as soon as the kids get on the plane, they're starving. I don't know why, but it's something fun to do and it keeps them occupied. If they are old enough, like 2+, some sort of sweet treat or candy, just anything that is something that's new and exciting to them that they don't see every day at home makes getting on the airplane like an even more special and like exciting memory that they'll have. And I like to also do that with toys as well. So I usually buy on Amazon like 1 or 2 things that they've never seen before, but things that they love to do on the airplane that keeps them busy, but it's lightweight. They love new puzzles, Play-Doh, window-friendly stickers, any sort of coloring activity. They love to get new cars and Hot Wheels, which are tiny, just anything lightweight. And one of my favorite things that I started doing recently was packing 3 to 4 very light books that are paperback, but they're long, like they're full-blown stories that could take me 20 to 30 minutes to read at a time if I like really drag it out and ask them questions about each page. And if you have the time, wrapping it, like it makes it feel special that they're getting a present, having 3 or 4 things wrapped in your backpack ready to go. So if things start to get a little rocky with one of them, you could say, oh, look what mommy has. And you can bring out that next new exciting thing. Another thing too is this process. I'm sorry if some of these sound obvious, but I just want to remind you because you'll forget there's a lot of things to think about. Sippy cups. My boys are not really allowed to drink a lot of sugary drinks, but on the airplane, they're allowed to have like a Sprite or whatever. And it never fails. One of them spills it and then they're upset that they're wet. And so the rule is on the airplane, the drinks go in a sippy cup. So it's exciting that they're getting the soda, but it has to go with a lid. Okay, moving on to being at the airport. Give yourself time when you arrive at the airport. We now are traveling with children. They're gonna need to go to the bathroom. Somebody's gonna have a diaper change. There's gonna be an extra line for something. Just prepare and get there early. And there's nothing wrong with getting there early because the longer that you have once you're through to just let them run around and get their zoomies out, the better. If you're going straight onto the airplane, they've had no opportunity to experience being at the airport, which is also a fun and exciting thing for a child. Some airports domestically, like here in the United States, have cute little play areas for children, and that's where I post up. Internationally, at bigger airports, these play places are incredible. Like the London airport has 2 or 3, depending on the terminal you're in, that I've spent hours for a layover at. The Amsterdam play area was my favorite of all time. It is the cutest play area. But find the play area at the airport once you've gone through. But anyway, that I went off on a tangent there. So when you get to the airport, when you're checking in, check as much as you can. There is no reason to be carrying so many things through the airport that you don't need. When I am going through the airport, I have my diaper bag. And sometimes if it's like my longer 30-hour travels, there might be a side tote bag too. But I need my hands free. I'm chasing 3 kids through an airport. And when you check in, it's worth asking if it's a full flight, because if it's not and they see that you're traveling with children, sometimes if they're nice, they'll be willing to move your seat to a aisle that maybe does not have another person sitting next to you. So it can give you just a little bit of that extra space. If you have a car seat that does fit in a standard economy seat, that also could be worth bringing through the airport and onto the airplane for the baby to sleep in, so you don't have to be holding it the whole time. So you never know what they're going to say, but it's definitely worth asking. The worst they can say is no, right? The next piece of advice is, and every time I've traveled, it's just been a little different depending on where I'm going, but having strollers and car seats and all of that, I am so lucky that both my parents and my in-laws love to have everything that I need at their house. It's less stuff that I have to travel with. If you're going on a vacation that doesn't have car seats or strollers, you need to bring all that stuff. And my experience with a stroller is that you could put the baby in the stroller and you always have your carrier handy. Because the worst thing that could happen is that your baby doesn't want to be in the stroller halfway through going through the airport and they're screaming. At least you have a backup of strapping them to you as well. All of my babies are so happy if they're strapped to me. So it just kind of depends on what makes you the most comfortable and what you need once you get to the other end of your trip. Car seats, if you're not bringing them on the airplane, are always very easy to check, and the airline never requires that it counts as a bag. It's more of a special item. I've had a lot of car seats destroyed from traveling, which is why I don't love to bring them. And so if you have a case for it or a nice bag, it's definitely worth even like maybe buying one on Amazon, some sort of protection or cover. And it just keeps it clean. I've bought the super expensive Waby. It's like a travel car seat. To be honest, it broke on one of our travels. Like, they were really good about fixing it. But to me, it's so big and clunky that it's not really worth the money. That's my own opinion. So my next piece of advice is going to be very dependent on how old your child is and where they are at with potty training. But my experience has been, if they're like 3 or 4 and under, and even though they're fully potty trained, I put them in a pull-up when we're going through the airport. And that's really because my 3-year-old cannot hold it. Like, if he says that he needs to go to the bathroom, he has given me absolutely 0 warning. And if I don't get him to a toilet within like 2 minutes, he's going to pee or poop his pants. And so our rule is, through the airport, you have to wear a pull-up. If you're standing in a really long line checking in, or for security, they have their diaper on. Just an emergency worst case. They don't like going in their diaper, but if they have to, that it is what it is. Once you get through the airport completely and you do have like a baby, even if they don't really need a new one, I always change it like right before I get it on the flight, just so you're starting fresh. And hopefully, if it's a short flight, you don't even have to use the bathroom changing table because it's so small. It's not my favorite thing. Okay, a little bit of a hot take here. I feel like it's 50-50 what moms and dads prefer to do. But I am team be the last one on the airplane. After they board the first and business class, they allow families to board. And I've done that before. And my opinion is, I am already going to be sitting on an airplane for a pretty long time with children. Why do I want to get on there earlier than I need to? And they say to get situated. To me, I'm like, what is there to do to get situated? You get them in their seats and put their seatbelt on. I don't know. It's my own personal decision. Let the kids run around for as long as they possibly can at the airport. And I usually tell the person up at the front, like, hey, I want to be the last one. Like, don't leave without me. Just want you to know that I'm on this flight and I'm going to be the last one to get on it. And then you're not standing in a line. Usually you just go right through onto the airplane. Once you're on the plane and we're taking off, I take the biggest deep breath and I'm like, okay, there is now nothing that you can possibly do to make something go wrong. You've made it onto this airplane and it is now going to your final destination. Once I'm on the plane, that's like the easiest part, right? It sounds funny because you still have to like actually entertain the kids and do all that stuff. It's just those three other categories leading up to getting to the plane is the hardest part. So congrats, you're on the plane. The worst case thing can happen is that they're going to cry the whole time. And let's be real, that's not going to happen. You're prepared. If you've listened to my advice, you have everything that you could possibly have in your tool belt to pull out in worst case scenarios. My kids love to look out the window. I try not to bring out any of the fun, exciting things yet, unless things are getting like bad before we even take off. But during takeoff, if it's a baby, and I try not to feed my baby like going through an airport and I want them to be as hungry as they can be getting on the plane, I will nurse them during takeoff. And the goal is that they fall asleep like for the first hour or two of the flight. And if you have an older child, I love to do some sort of chewy candy or even chewing gum. My 5-year-old loves chewing gum and he understands not to swallow it, but something for any child to help with their ears. Once you are in the air and the seatbelt sign has been turned off, something I forgot to mention in my packing list that is really important, and I have 3 of them now that I have 3 children, are blow up footrests. They look like these rectangular square box looking things, and I blow them up. Whether the child is going to sleep on the airplane or not, it makes it more comfortable for them to have their feet resting up on something versus if they're little and their feet are just kind of like dangling when it is time to go to bed or to take a nap. That footrest actually becomes their head pillow. So if you can picture it, their head is near where your tray comes down. And then they're curled up a little bit and they're sleeping on their side and their feet are kind of like where your butt goes. And I have had so much success with it that I have 3 of them. So I'm sorry I forgot to mention it in my packing list, but when it comes to sleep, I am go with the flow. If I stress about them staying on a sleep schedule, they are going to sense my stress level and I don't want them to feel like they are forced to go into sleep. So if it's an overnight flight, like I've done before, after the meal service, I do like a full bedtime routine. So my littlest one still sleeps in a sleep sack. So I get him in his sleep sack and I'll do a really long book time. And then I'll turn off all the lights and I'll rub their backs and sing them songs. And I try not to get too stressed out about the sleep thing. But that's my advice when it comes to napping and sleeping on an airplane is don't stress if they've skipped the nap. They're going to be okay one day going a little out of routine. You have everything that I have prepared you with. So you have lots of fun snacks, candy if you're willing to do it, lots of fun new little fidget gadget toys and things that they've never seen before. And I space these out as much as I possibly can. Like, for example, if you gave your child a lollipop and they are happy with that lollipop, don't disrupt the situation. If they're happy, there is nothing that you need to be doing. Sometimes you feel like you have to be constantly entertaining them. If they're happy, you're happy. Don't pull out anything. If things start to get a little bit rocky, you now have another thing in your backpack that you can pull out. So if you just start pulling out everything like, look, mommy got you a lollipop and a new book. No, give them the lollipop. See if they're doing okay. If they're not, then you have another thing as a backup to bring out. Sometimes I've gotten through the whole travel without opening any of the new toys. And I'm like, great, I'll use it for the way back. I've had that happen before where it's just gone so smooth. I try not to use screens too much and I try to save that also as a backup, but I always have movies and TV shows downloaded to the iPad for worst case scenario. Like I have done everything. These kids are not happy and it is what it is. So I always use that as my absolute last resort. Or if it's a 30-hour travel, they deserve a movie. It's a long day for everybody. But when they're 1 to 2 years old, they don't have, usually, at least none of mine did, an interest in watching TV. So if things were going south or they were just not happy, they love to look at videos of themselves or of their siblings. So like worst case, their screen time is I will pull out my cell phone and I'll be like, look, this is you at the play place that we were just at the airport. And I'll try to film them and show them video of themselves. But honestly, hype up travel. Like my kids are so well traveled at this point that they love to get on an airplane and they know what to expect. So leading up to our trip, my husband and I hype them so much about how great they are at traveling and you're going to make mommy and daddy so proud, and they want to. It was 2 summers ago I was traveling by myself, and my husband sat down and talked to the 2 older boys and said, mommy's going to be alone. She's going to have the baby too. You guys have to really help her. And he said that for a month straight. Every day we would talk about the travel, that to the point that when we finally got through the airport and on the airplane, they had been coached so much and knew how to act. I know it sounds repetitive and redundant, but the more they hear it, the more prepared they are of how to act going through an airport, how to act while sitting on an airplane. But you can do it. It's hard sometimes, but it's worth it to go see that place you've never been or see that family member you haven't seen in a while. And you as the mom have to, in your head, have this mantra of like, I can do this. It might be hard, but it is going to be worth it. So I hope some of this was helpful. Sorry if some of it seemed really obvious, and safe travels for you and your family. This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. If you made it all the way to the end, you are amazing. Thank you for listening and your support. Let's stay connected, and here are my tasks for you. Subscribe, like, and share on your favorite podcast app or on my website, basecamped.com. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at BasecampEdApp, and go download Basecamp if you haven't already. Leave a comment and spread the love.